to me, that's what I heard.
Do you need this, Tracy?
Thanks to me.
That would be too close. I would say respect my personal space. Okay, so this is paraverbal communication. It kind of throws me when we say para because, you know, in my mind the definition of para is people that I work with on a daily basis. But what it is the vocal part of speech. Okay, so this is how we say what we say. Okay? So the tone, you try to avoid inflections of impatience. So this is the, I mean, you guys are on a time crunch. I get it, that you are supposed to be at the one elementary that is letting out right now, but that kid's having a meltdown and you're wondering where the heck he is because you got everybody else and they're starting to get nervous and you want to get on the road because you have to get to that other elementary. So I understand that you're in a hurry. Kids can really pick up on tone, if we're irritated by them. And if you don't, inattention, by this I mean, you know what, sometimes they're talking because they're always saying the same thing over and over again. You're kind of doing the yep. But are you really listening to what they're saying? So I think that's the point here is even repeat what they say. When they're asking you the same questions over and over again, really what they want you to do is, if you just repeat that question back to them, it's probably calming enough. They're looking for the same response to the same question every time because it calms me. So if you just give it to them, it's over. Volume. Keep the volume appropriate for the distance and the situation. I mean, you're on the bus, I think. And I'm not sure how this would change on the bus. For us, sometimes when we're in the hallway, sometimes we're talking a little bit too loud. It's almost like you're putting on a show for everybody else that's around. Like, look at me using my skills. Look at me, I'm de-escalating right now. Look at this. Everyone, I'm working in a situation here. That's kind of the thing that I want to talk about when we're in the buildings. I don't know if that necessarily happens on the bus because sometimes it's just you. Yeah?
Yeah, it does, and I think what I've seen being on the buses is some of the men in general are loud naturally. Yep. They talk very loudly, and in a bus, the volume echoes or is magnified. And sometimes it talks very, very fast, and you can't understand what they're saying. Maybe you need to slow down what you're saying. You know, so sometimes culturally,
why is he looking at you? I don't know why we're talking about this. I'm not talking soccer.
So we are a diverse group, so keep that in mind also.
Yeah. But it's loud on the bus too, just the engine, everything.
Yeah.
Have some soft-spoken people.
And honestly, I mean,
Yeah.
really, can you not hear me?
What?
I think this thing, it's buzzing and...
You're in a hot spot right in front of the speaker.
Oh, that's fine. Hot mic. Okay.
And then,
Okay. All right.
Cooler.
When I'm thinking about the sensory issues of kids as well on the spectrum. So if they're on that bus, they hear the engine, they hear the echo, they hear the rattles, and now we're talking over it. That is too much input. It's one of the things that my nephew's on the spectrum, and he's verbal. He talks a lot, but one of the things he couldn't do when he was younger was ride the bus. And he just would tell me, I hate it. And my brother would say, I don't understand because, I mean, we go to Dairy Queen and it's loud in there and he's got no problem waiting in line for ice cream. But, you know, all of a sudden I can't ride the bus and we got to come get him. But it really is situational. It is depending on your sensory system that day, whether or not I can tolerate as loud, you know, a volume as I would have maybe a day before. That changes from day to day, and I think we'll talk a little bit about sensory. I know this isn't the autism one, but I like to throw it in.
These guys are all special.
And that's true. So, and the cadence. Deliver your message using an even rate or rhythm. So, fast is too fast. We're fast talkers over there. Also, the amount of language a kid can process. They might have expressive language that seems that they're fairly high and they're understanding you. The majority of the time, they sound a lot higher than they are. So the amount of language we use should be limited no matter what. Yeah. So.
Does that make sense to everybody? Even though it seems like because of the way that they speak and the language that they use, like, well, they just get it, you know, because they have a big vocabulary or whatever. They're not probably taking in, though, they're not receiving information that well, you know.
And when they're in an escalated state or an anxiety state, the amount that they process reduces by about half. You know, my nephew's old enough now where he can kind of tell me a little bit about it, but he says, I don't understand anything. It's just wah, 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 when he gets to that point. And everybody just keeps talking, he says. He can hear the fans, like in the classroom, he complains about the fans just overhead that nobody can hear. He also complains about if the airport traffic has been rerouted. He's got on a blog site and complained because it's too loud out on the playground. He can hear it when they change it. So little things like that where we don't really even notice it because we can filter. They can't filter. All right? That's it.
Okay, so
Is this thing on?
this is, okay, so the next thing we're gonna do is, oh, this is gonna be interesting. We are going to, okay, we're gonna break down, let me just preface this by saying, back to our nuts and bolts, right? CPI, crisis development model. This second level here, defensive. Remember we told you, oh, there's a whole other continuum with that. We're gonna break that down. We're gonna break that down into steps for you now. But we're going to do that, we're going to do a lecture when we're done, we're going to do that by doing some exercises. So what this is called is the verbal escalation continuum. It's in your workbook, it's the next page over. We call it the kite sometimes, but we're going to do our lecture on it when we're done. First, we're going to do some exercises to explain each level on that continuum and how the defensive level breaks down into pieces, all right? Okay. Yes. How are you going to do that? Well, so we need two groups. Yeah, we do. And a big space. We're going to have to try to squish in the back.
We could just count off by two.
Let's count off. And are you going to count them off? Have them count.
Just start here. You're at one.
Two.
Pay attention. Come on, administration.
Who does two?
We're gonna move our table.
You're two? One?
You're one. Remember your number, people.
We're going to need to turn it this way anyhow.
One. Pay attention.
You're one.
One.
Two. Three. Two.
One. All right, so, and, I'm sorry.
All right.
And do you want to take the first group out?
Yep, I got it. Yep,
Okay.
I do.
All the ones go with Ann in the hall. All the twos go to the back of the room with me, please.
I don't mind.
However, you're
Are you one? No, she's in the hall. No, I'm in the hall? One's in the hall.
all right.
Two.
All the twos are in here? No. We got a big group. We got a big group, Bill. We're good.
You go count.
All right, is everybody in this room a two? We're all twos.
I hope so.
No, you know.
All right, we don't want them to hear us. Well, no, they can. We don't want to hear that really. Okay, so if everybody's a two, so here's the deal. What you guys are for this, what you're going to be, we're going to do some role play. Okay, so that's what's going to happen. So basically, you're going to have. We didn't get you into partners yet. You're gonna have What? Right. So, thank you. So We'll figure out partners when we come back. Basically, one of the ones is gonna be your partner when they come back in, okay? They're gonna be your person that you're gonna work with, okay? So basically, you are all the staff members right now. So you're the driver, you're the parent on the bus, whatever you are, whatever your role is as a staff member. Anyways, you're the staff person, okay? So you're gonna give your student, so that's one of those people out there is gonna be your student, okay? You're gonna give them a directive. So anything, don't do something crazy, do something that you do on a daily basis, you know? Go take a seat, just something simple like that. You know, please put your backpack over here, or I don't know what you tell them to do. But just give them a directive, that's all. Put your seatbelts on. Yeah. Okay, they're going to challenge you a little bit. This is your student, they're gonna give you a little bit of a challenge. You're gonna have to deal with that. Okay, so try to remember, try to come up with things that you might do to try to get them to comply with your request. Okay, you want them to get, oh my God, it's getting late. You want them to do what you ask, okay? Okay, okay?
Okay.
So that's it. So maybe just find a space in here because you're gonna have to interact. So let's try to spread out a little bit. Let's make a line. See if we can make, let's try to spread out a little because then your person's gonna have to be with you. Yeah, thank you. Make a big open space. We'll do the best we can.
You guys can move over this way.
Yeah, but I have to.
It ain't that much room over there either, Andrew.
We're gonna, and tell them to find a partner. We can do that. Yep, just pick somebody and stand by them.
Go find a student.
No, we the staff. We the staff.
What you bring
To enforce the budget.
Come back out! Come back out!
I want to know process. Real quick, we got to
What other directive do we have than sit down and put your seatbelt on?
Let's switch this.
Yeah.
So both of us are all students. and
No.
we have to-
So you guys, the next time around, we'll all go up the hall and you'll be students. Okay, that's how this is gonna work. So you'll get to be a student too, don't worry. And you'll get to do
Wash
the
my car.
escalation.
Polish the rims.
Anyone else have an idea for a directive? I'm like, what else do we have other than sit down and put your seatbelt on? It's
Twice,
boring,
twice.
boring group.
If it's too loud, you ever have to tell them to keep their hands to themselves?
Yeah, not picking your seat partner.
Quick party.
Trying to be loud.
Put those toys in your backpack.
Cover your coffee.
Yeah.
Put that cigarette out.
Stuff like that.
Put that cigarette out. How about stop killing yourself?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
You got some of those too?
yeah. One.
I have brand new ones. Because I don't see them at all.
Carol, I would take.
He's fresh.
I got 10 months.
Kids are all under the seat.
For 10 weeks.
Yeah? And he actually, I actually was not at work.
Do you ever do this?
Okay, sorry. All right, yeah, find a.
Go to the same part we had before.
It's up to you.
Whatever you want. Let's start with the person. Everybody take a part.
Find a bus driver All right, does everybody have those? Come in. Pick a driver. Hey, guys,
No one wants the Toya?
this should not be as entertaining as it seems to be for you guys. I'm just saying. She's like, who do I want? All right, we all have a partner? Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, so then staff, ready everybody? Think about everything we learned so far. Think about CPI supportive stance, body language, personal, all that stuff. And staff, give your directive.
Super easy.
Go for it. Go.
Hey, Billy, let's go.
Where?
Your regular
Why? Do we get candy? Why? I have to go food. No, I'm not going. No. When did Hitler become a para? When did we move to communist Russia? What makes you think that you can tell me anything about anything or anything in any other way? No, I'm not gonna. You're a Nazi. I have to go poop.
All right.
Was that on the whole time?
We gotta move through this. I'm just gonna let you know it's really hard with this size group to get you guys all back. I get it, but I'm looking at the clock and everybody else. I mean, we don't want to go home right at 8. So I
We
just
want
want
to go
to be.
home
I'm
at
just
5
trying to
after
keep.
7.
I'm gonna keep my mind on that time. So let's.
You can turn the light off and on, that way.
Okay, we might
You
do
can do
that.
that.
Or we can just listen.
Yeah.
All right. So as you approached your student, did you give a very simple directive? And how'd that go for you?
Very defined.
So what was, it got really complicated. So what are some examples of what that student said to you? Why? Too many whys.
No, I want to go home first and watch my show.
I don't like that seat.
Not feeling well.
Okay.
I didn't want to sit down. They can't.
Okay. Can they? You're not the boss of me. Okay. And I heard over here, I think you said, all right, no more questions.
I said 2 more questions and then that's it.
2 more questions and that's it.
There you go.
All right. When she was asking questions? Yeah. You just, I don't understand what you're saying. Yeah. And how did she react? She just kept going, right? So did it de-escalate? Probably not. So then what was instructed was, as we were outside, they were told to give, when you gave that directive, that our students were to start asking questions. And at first, the questions should have been pretty logical and things that you could have answered, like, you know, are we there yet? Or how much longer is it going to be? And what time is it? Can I sit in that chair? And is so-and-so going to be picked up now? And are we going to so-and-so's house first? Those things can be answered. And then they should have amped it up a bit. And then it should have been where they were asking questions that were a little bit more belligerent and things that really couldn't be answered. And the example I gave was, you know, who died and made you boss? Those things that you just, you want to give an answer to, but you really don't have. You know, anything else that you guys noticed during that question? Did anybody calm down once you answered that question?
I did.
Kids started sitting on the floor. And not
You dropped to the floor?
Oh, that's later, but you know,
Yeah.
right.
Way to move through those, what are those called, stages? See, it's after 7. I lose all vocabulary after 7. All right, so we're going to switch it up. Do another one? Okay.
Group number 2, come on with me.
So then my group stays here. If you were out in the hallway, out before, you stay in now.
Is this on?
Yes, it's on.
You are now staff.
Now you have to edit that.
If you were here,
no.
you're
You
now
want
out
me to
there.
reroute her?
Tom, you stay. Were you out the hallway first?
You don't care about
He was.
that. Okay, so,
You know what? A very simple answer to a lot of nonsensical questions is what I use. I will write you up and send to your school, and your teacher and your parents. They will explain everything to you. You know, it works practically every time.
so to me, that's threatening.
Yeah, that's what I said.
And if you know a kid, and you know that that is something that they're working towards is not getting written up or something, and you say, remember, if this happens, I'll have to write you up. But if it's more of a threatening, you could send some kids right through the roof. And then they get off the bus and they're fully lit.
I had a real problem, kids, and they did what? Yeah, I didn't say like that. That's what I will. No, I just said, you know, what if you don't understand? If you don't understand me, it's very simple. I will have to write you up, and then I will send to your school.
If they're just asking you informational questions, like...
No, like I said, nonsensical question.
Oh.
If it's
sometimes-
come to the nonsense.
If they're nonsense questions, well, if they're getting to where they're being, you know, a little bit belligerent, then I can see that you would say, this is where you
Oh,
say...
it's a last resort. It's not. I don't start with that, but it's when we have questions that I cannot answer. Because it's
I mean, it's a power play. I get it. I use that as well, you know, that as a reminder, if we continue. But this is where, if they're asking those questions and they're getting a little bit more adversarial, a little bit more belligerent, this is where we're really clear on what you want them to do. I need you to sit. I need you to stop talking. I need quiet. And you may even ignore, if it's an attention-seeking behavior, the best thing to do for an attention-seeking behavior is ignore it. The hardest thing to do is ignore it. Hold on. I gotta make
But
sure
we
we're
don't
gonna do the
have
right
time for
thing.
that.
Because when they come in, they're gonna give you a directive. You're gonna go through that same thing.
We're the drivers.
You're giving a directive to them. They're gonna go through that same thing. So you gotta keep reminding who we are. You're gonna give that simple directive. They're gonna go through those scales like you did, and then you just need to respond in the best way you know how, okay? Come on in.
Okay. Come on in.
What's she got?
She said, don't take all that.
Oh, we were talking about
I told you, they don't have time.
How was your day?
Are we supposed to just start?
Okay, wait a minute. We haven't started yet. Park the bus.
All right, everybody.
I have to say she did ask me to reroute.
Do we all have a new or the same partner?
The same partner.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter if you're with a different person or same person, but we need staff to give a directive, a very simple directive. Ready?
the things that you experienced if you were a staff member? What did your students, how did the students respond to your directive?
They just refuse.
Just refuse, did not listen.
Loud.
Questions, loud, and then refuse, yes.
They ask for items they don't have.
They ask for items they don't have.
They ask for items you can't give them.
Books or something like that, it's at home, you don't have them.
Okay, so they ask for something that you can't help them with. Right, okay.
She told me not to say home again, say destination.
Okay, so did not like the terminology.
I told him I was homeless. He was trying to take me home. I said, "That's not my home. You gonna say destination?"
Okay, so obviously you need a little more challenging, okay? So, that's right, so basically what happened was is they gave you a little bit more of a challenge, right? So you gave them a directive, and then they probably started maybe with some questions like last time, but then they moved into probably what our second stage is refusal, so they just weren't doing it. No, I'm not going to do what you're telling me to do. So that might have looked different ways.
Not until we said we get the teacher on the bus, and then they were gonna.
Hey, I used that.
Not until we said we were going to get the teacher on the bus. So that was something that we tried to use. Now, is that something you could have followed through with?
There is a
If it were-
The parent was still there, so you could have done
Stay there
that.
until we load them up.
Okay. Good. So, yes. Anybody else have any other thoughts? He got on the bus and said he was the boss. How would you respond to that? So you just redirected back to what you wanted? Yeah. That's good. We're going to get into that in our lecture. He redirected. Very good. Anybody else? Is this a little bit more challenging, staff members? Yeah. Yeah, it's a little harder.
Wanted a piece of candy that I can't give her.
Wanted candy, you can't give it to her.
Yes, and I tried to explain to her the reason why. Continue asking. I just want to. I told her that I was going to get a parent to come on the line to talk to her.
Okay, so you're using your team members. You're going to get parents and teachers involved if that's available to you. Perfect, yes.
Hey guys, listen up.
Mine was similar, but I just said you can maybe have candy when you get home, or, oh, what kind of candy are you going to get during Halloween, or
Redirect, we're hearing that a lot. Good, so.
Well, we don't celebrate Halloween.
I have to say that when I was the student and I was complaining about my bus number because I ride home at 2:12 and I want 2:12, but now it's 10:34 and I want that and I want 2:12, and and that's something you can't give me. But he said, well, I've got that book you like. I've got that book you like right here. Well, it might not even be that it's the number of the bus the kid's complaining about, but all of the comfort items or the same seat or the sameness of it isn't there. So he gave me a comfort item and I was okay with that.
Perfect.
Because it was SpongeBob.
Nice. Okay, so back out with Ann. Andrew. Number one, go with Ann and Hall.
I think Brian was your partner, Randy. I think Brian was your partner. Weren't you? Didn't you walk in late from?
All right, ready, you guys? So it's going to get a little more interesting. Let me just tell you that. Okay. Okay. So again, you're going to give another directive. Switch it up. Give the same directive. It's up to you.
We be the staff, right?
You're the staff. Yeah. So, but just know that it's going to start getting a little bit more interesting. So you're going to have to really be thinking on your feet. Think about how are you going to respond. Think about it. Really think about it in a real situation. I know this is kind of fun. It's kind of silly. But really try to be realistic too, though, and as far as if you really had to deal with the situation, because it could happen. So really try to figure out how you're going to try to get them to comply and do what you have asked them to do, because they're going to make it more challenging for you. But no worries, because you get to do the last round and be the most challenging yet.
Yeah.
Okay. So be ready for this group, because they're probably going to make it hard for you. Have you noticed it gets harder and harder as we go?
You should go for it.
No, I was gonna ask you, you look familiar, are you a para? Yes. Okay, so you've been through training before, haven't you? Or hospitals? Yeah, have you been through my CPI training before? Maybe I just went to your building and did a meeting with you guys. Yeah. Anyone else haven't seen you here? I've been around a long time, so a lot of you look familiar.
Must have seen me at the high school.
No.
Been here, what, 30 years now?
No, not quite.
36.
I think so.
You've seen me, haven't you?
Oh, yeah. A lot of you look familiar. I've been around a long time.
Oh, I know.
Same partner, different partner, we don't care.
Everybody back up for one. Just one little thing, just one little thing, just one little
They're gonna
thing.
make it hard for
Just one
you.
little thing.
You're right with the staff, right? The staff. All right, now.
Okay, find a partner.
You're close to the microphone, they can hear you.
All right, find a partner. All right, it looks like everybody has somebody at this point, right? Yes?
I get you.
Driver, go ahead and get that directive to your student.
I just want to run up and down the bus.
All right, here we go. Well, that was big. We've been doing this a long time, and I know you're a big group, but holy. So what was different?
Did we get in a crash?
I'm guessing the student was told just a simple direction, right? Get on the bus. And then they were questioning you. And then there was refusal. And then after refusal, what happened?
Lightning strike?
Yeah, well, what happened after that rain?
The bus driver died. I turned around and went back.
What did the student do after the light flickered? What did your students do?
Freak out.
Yeah, they freaked out.
Really lost it.
They lost it.
I picked my backpack.
There was crying, there was screaming, there was yelling, they dropped to the floor. You know, we'll talk about that too. Sometimes when kids aren't getting up, we call that a sit strike because they're striking on you, not going anywhere.
Yeah.
That's tough when they start falling to the floor and there's that emotional outburst. And so we want to move on to the next one.
We do.
Okay.
Yes, we do.
Because we'll talk more when we're done. Okay, group number 2 with me in the hall.
Let's keep it a bit away, you know?
Did she say when the lights go?
Just keep your nose straight.
Figure it out there. It is what it is.
She said, break down, don't break down.
I do that light thing, so you know, for a little bit of dramatic effect, and then nobody's like ahead or the other. But I didn't realize you guys don't really need that for dramatic effect.
She has that right. I want to see Randy throw a tantrum.
Did you see Mohamed's face? Yeah. He started panicking. Yeah, I fell on the floor. I turned around, Brandon's on his head spinning. You know.
Yeah,
I'm banging.
so they're going to come back as move to the next level. So they're, you know, I hope it just tells them that we don't be as dramatic because we get it now. I mean, we don't need to. Go
They are going to be twice as dramatic. I guarantee.
You're going to get that simple direction because there's another level.
Yeah, but what we supposed to do after they melt down?
We're going to talk about that. Because we're going to go through each level here of that defensive level. We're breaking it all down. And then we're going to go through each one and tell you how you should respond to each level. Because it's very different when they're asking questions than when they're on the floor, rolling around and hollering. Because they're not hearing anything.
For us, it's very easy to respond. Take a microphone and call base, and call the teacher to get the kid out of the bus, and that is your responsibility.
Oh, I mean.
No, you were so that's not the way it works.
So you're driving down the road.
You know what is not ready to ride?
No, it's not.
It's how it works.
The one that got me was North Education.
Well, so right now you're telling me you've got two things. You've got I call home base, or I threaten to write them up. We're going to give you so many other tools. You're going to just be, you're going to be checking your book and say,
doing this for 20 years. I get
This man and I went through that whole scenario. Had to go and turn around with a student who was going ballistic. We got to school. The staff were afraid to come on the bus after they promised they would come on board and help. Brendan and I had to physically remove the student from back.
You don't have to do it. You have to call your own police. We're not supposed to touch the kids.
well, you can now because you'll be trained.
But we're not supposed to touch kids until it's threatening our safety or safety.
And that's what this training is. That's exactly what we're going to do at the same time.
Alright, everybody have a partner? We're going to have everybody quiet it all the way down to begin this one. We're going to have it all the way quieted down. Alright, everybody have a partner?
I never get one. Wow, terrifying bus ride.
Are we missing, are we uneven people that we don't have a partner with?
I got it.
Where did Randy go?
Does everybody have a partner? Okay, when it's all quiet, we're going to begin. All right, staff, give your directive. Okay, girl.
TikTok.
I'd rather not be here till 9. I don't know about all of you. Okay, let's open up our workbooks.
That's a trend.
All right,
We're just setting
Page
clear
9.
boundaries.
Okay, page 9 in your workbook. So again, this is the verbal escalation continuum. Basically, okay, so you'll see sometimes we refer to this as the kite because it looks like a kite, okay? Now, it has the word defensive right in the middle of it because, as we were saying earlier, this verbal escalation continuum is a breakdown of the defensive level right here on the crisis development model, okay? So remember we talked about defensive at the very beginning of tonight and how we're going to be directive as our response? Well, this breaks up that level into all these different stages of how it may look, okay, and the different stages that you might see, okay? So it gets a little bit tricky, but this is really very important because this is how you guys can de-escalate situations so that we don't have to go hands-on, okay? So, number 1, as you remember, the first group did questioning. There's 2 different kinds of questions, information-seeking questions and challenging questions. Information-seeking questions are just a simple question seeking a rational question asking for a rational response. Like, okay, time to get on the bus and take your seat. Well, what time is it? Okay, well maybe they really want to know what time it is, right? So what do? How do we Oh, we're not there yet. Okay, you tell them the time. So the other kind of question is challenging, and that's more your challenging authority of you guys. So that's when you're saying, who died and made you boss, or who are you to tell me to get on the bus, or all those kinds of questions, okay? So that's a little bit more belligerent, challenging, staff, and again, trying to draw you into a power struggle. You don't want to go there. You don't want to go back and go, wow, and then they have to say something back to you. No, you don't want to do that, okay? All right? So how do we respond to that? For an information-seeking question, like we were just saying up here, I heard you say, they just ask you that rational question, you answer it. You just answer their question. Give a rational response. That's all you got to do, okay? Challenging, and sometimes they might ask you a question that seems rational, but actually it is challenging. So then you would answer it, but then redirect back to the topic. So let's just say you say, all right, it's time to get on the bus, take your seat, put your seatbelt on, or whatever you say. Take your seat, put your seatbelt on. And they go, well, what time is it? You can say, it's 3 o'clock, time to put your seatbelt on, right? So you redirect back to what you really want them to do. Answer the question, because you don't know if it's challenging or not, but then redirect back to what you want them to do, okay? So stick to that topic, redirect back to it, ignore the challenge. Don't get into that power struggle, just ignore that, okay? And then setting limits. So we'll get there. Don't worry about this yet. Okay, we're going to get there with the next level. Questions or comments on that? Ideas of what people have done? No, we're good. Okay, move forward. So, the next one gets a little bit trickier, right? This is the refusal, the non-compliance. Okay, so now we've got a slight loss of rationalization. Okay, they're starting to kind of lose it with you. This is where we're limiting those verbals. We're not going to be doing so much talking anymore because now they're kind of getting escalated and they're starting to not comprehend all your words. I don't care what ability level they're at. I mean, me. If I'm starting to get a little bit escalated and you're doing all this woo 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 in my ear, I'm not hearing you at all. So it's best to just limit your verbals, okay? So the refusal, non-compliance, slight loss of rationalization, they're like, no, I'm not doing it, okay? What do? Set limits. This is where we set those limits. I think we're going to get into those maybe next week, possibly. Of just keys, we're going to get into that more detail because that's tricky sometimes, giving those 2 choices and all that, okay? But just know that this is when you're going to set those limits. You're going to be directive, right? And just, these are your choices. This is what we're doing, period, okay? So the third level is release. That's that, oh my God, when you flick the lights, I didn't know what was happening, okay? So, but I'm sure you do see that on the bus sometimes, right? Thank goodness it's not with 20 people all at once. But that's that verbal acting out, that emotional outburst. So now they've lost it. The rationalization is gone, okay? So now you are not talking them through anymore. You're not going, Well, we need you to get up off the floor now. And this is why, because, no.
Why are
you're
you
not-
acting like this?
Right.
Why are you doing this? Why are you acting like
Yeah.
this? They don't know.
No.
They can't answer.
Yeah. They're not with you anymore. It's just not working. So now, you're gonna allow, if this is where it gets tricky, and especially on a bus. So if we need to have some conversation about this, I think we should. This is why we're here, okay? So the best thing to do, we say like in the classroom or wherever, allow them to let off steam, right? We always say, take the other classmates out of the classroom or remove them from the class and let them yell and scream and stomp. What are you gonna do on the bus? Can you do that? No. Okay, so that's not a possibility for you. Remove the audience or that individual. Can you do that on the bus?
No.
What can we do? Change their seats. Okay? If you have room and if you can't, yeah, go ahead.
So I also want to think of if we're in the middle, if they're already seatbelted in, and if it really is to get your attention, to get that response from you, because that is attention-seeking behavior, and the negative attention is just as good as positive attention for a lot of kids. And it's very easy for you to get drawn into that. When we say allow that individual to let off steam, ignore it. If they're safe, you're safe, let them holler.
Yeah.
You don't have to say, you can't say that, stop saying that, you have to be quiet, because now they're just gonna amp it up. It's because you said that, now we've triggered more behavior. Yeah.
Well, I just had a situation last week, and one of the students that's letting off steam is attacking another student on the bus.
That's completely different.
Yeah.
Then we'll talk about that, because if they're harm to themselves or others, we've hit.
We go somewhere else.
This is still just the verbal melting down, hollering, crying, that sort of thing. Yeah, they're not hurting themselves or you. The only thing I would say is, if it's absolutely out of control, screaming, and you cannot focus or drive, then that's a different situation. I think you do have to probably pull over.
Yeah, I mean, that's real. That's.
If it's just the, calling you names, and you know that everything is safe, let it go.
And maybe guide and direct your other students to ignore that as well. If you can move others away from that individual so that you're really ignoring that whole situation, do that if you can.
So that's a good point. If you have other kids that are sitting actually in that seat, and you had to pull over, can you move the other kids further away from that student? Depends on the bus, because that would be something we could do as well.
Yeah, right.
Then you start triggering them because they're like, that's not my seat.
Well, yeah, but yeah, it's hard. I mean, you guys have a really hard job. I mean, know that, right? I mean, it's really hard. I think we do have to pick the most important, pick your priority, where if you've got this one that's really escalated at the moment, you can't worry about if it's going to snowball a little bit. I think you have to deal with that situation at hand first and then go from there. But your job is it's hard. It's not easy. Any questions, thoughts, comments? Anybody tried anything that worked that you'd like to share? Yes.
I did have a student that would get on my bus in the morning, but she was my very first student. And she would be having an issue with her mother when she got on the bus. And she would just be crying. And I'd say, you know what? Go ahead and cry. Scream, yell, do whatever it takes for you to make you feel better. It doesn't bother me if you're crying and screaming out loud.
Yeah.
And then after a while, she calmed down and she got it out of her system. But
and that is empathetic.
It didn't bother me. I was.
Yeah, if you can allow it, allow it.
I had no problem with it. And then if she did it when there were other students on the bus, I'd say she's just having a moment. Let her have her moment, and she'll be over it.
Yeah, great.
I think that's happened throughout the years, where if a student is having a bad time and they might be disturbing someone, but just for a few minutes, just to get it off of their chest or whatever. I think a lot of the other students sometimes, I mean, depending on who they are, they're empathetic to that too.
They're like, oh,
Yeah.
That's her turn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and really, if you're allowing that for a time period, you're probably making it a whole lot easier for the rest of the route, for the rest of the day. I mean, you're doing a lot of things by doing that. You know what I mean? You're de-escalating a whole lot more that could happen if you were kind of, trying to get them to stop that right away.
Because what we know with behavior is it all has a function.
Yes.
It all communicates something, and you just validating, I get it, you're ticked off, you're mad. When kids have meltdowns and they're on the floor doing that spin, and I just nod a lot and I say, oh, you are mad, you are so mad. And sometimes that's all they need because they're thinking you don't get it. I've already tried to tell you I'm irritated. Now I've already asked you these questions. I've already told you no, and you're not hearing me. So now I'm going to amp it up so you get what I'm saying. Just always try to figure out what is that behavior trying to say? What are they trying to convey to you?
Yeah, that's really what it's all about. Okay, so the next stage is intimidation. That was the threats. Okay, so those are threatening behaviors. So that's when they kind of go over the edge. The rationale is gone, obviously, but now they're even threatening, whether it's non-verbally or verbally. Okay, and that can look a lot of different ways, as we saw in our last exercise. Okay, what are we going to do with this? Okay, for you guys, so let's talk about this. Okay, some of you may be on a bus by yourself. You may not have another staff member on the bus with you, right? Is that true? Yep. So, as far as number one, we're going to take all threats seriously. Some kids, we say, they say that they're going to, they say I'm going to kill you every day, all the time. They just say it, right? I get that, but I still think, I think that needs to be in a plan somewhere. Like we need to know that information because it still is very serious. We don't know. So take all threats very seriously. This stuff needs to be documented. So take a mental note, whatever you need to do, but make sure that this is documented in some sort of a fashion in writing. So, let Bill know or whoever you go to, make sure that this is documented. Because this could be something that's happening at school or at home, and we all need to communicate that. And it can really make a difference in a lot of things, okay? So take it very seriously, document it. Seek assistance. Never go hands-on without a team member there. Okay, so we're never going to put our hands on anybody without our team member there. Now, with that said, you're on the bus by yourself driving a whole bunch of kids. What are you going to do? Right? What do you do? What do you think you might do?
Let dispatch know before you do anything.
Say that again?
Let dispatch know before you do anything because you're no good when you're getting your ass handed to you and nobody's coming.
Well, right, so you don't want to move forward and put hands on. Let dispatch know. So get on your walkie-talkie, right? Is that what you guys use, your radios or whatever? Okay, you get on that and you say, okay, I've got a student here who's starting to threaten another student or starting to threaten me. I'm going to need somebody to meet me here or whatever, and I guess you go somewhere and pull a bus over. Is that what you do? That's what I do. You have an emergency plan like that. That's kind of what you do. Do you guys have like a little policy in place for those types of situations, or not ready to ride? But if they're on the bus, do we have a code that we can say? Maybe we need to create that.
If you say yellow bus, means call the police.
What?
Where did that come from? Where did that come from? If you say yellow bus on the radio, means automatically they got to call the police because something happened that's life-threatening.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that there was maybe something in place. I think it'd be very important for you as a team to come up with some sort of a code for this type of a crisis. Yes,
Bill? Okay, there was some talk and maybe there was some language that was some codes that were determined last year. We don't remember that. But in general, whether it's a crash or life-threatening situation, injurious situation, Emergency, emergency, emergency. On channel 2. Emergency, emergency, emergency. Dispatch will get on the horn and say go to 2-3, and you immediately let them know your bus or situation, if there are any injuries, and if you need help. So it's the same procedure as if you're on a regular bus, except for you've got a student that's causing the problems. Okay?
So in a situation like this, Bill, where there's nothing physical that has happened yet, but there are threats being thrown there, and it's starting to get to where I don't feel comfortable on my bus being responsible for all these kids by myself. What is there a code, or is there something we should do in that situation?
Same situation, call in. We just recently had one, and the driver was directed or advised to come back, maybe by her own suggestion, to come back and get another staff member to ride alongside.
Okay.
So then she was no longer alone, but she had someone there as backup in case it did escalate even further. Okay.
So you would just get on your dispatch and tell them what's happening, or?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
When we go to, we have an emergency channel.
A different channel, okay. And so that way everybody would kind of know, like, okay, something's going, it's like an alert. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Well, it happened to me, situation when a kid says, I have a bomb in the bus, you know. So, you know, that was like a huge thing. And he's a 3rd grade, so.
You scared him?
Well, you don't know.
Yeah, but if, and what if he says if you touch the radio?
I mean.
Now what do you do?
Yeah, there's that situation where we've got students who are repeating things that they've heard on movies. I mean, we just had one this morning where the kid was yelling, shut up, I'm going to hurt you or something.
I'm going to kill you.
I'm going to kill you.
Right.
You have to really figure out, is that an abnormal behavior for that student? Is that something that he's done in the past? If you're talking about a 3rd grader who's says he's got a bomb on the bus, you know,
It might be as old as what, so I mean.
Right.
I would say that you want to be more cautious than not.
So that's why I think when last year they used the code yellow bus for the extreme conditions, and I think that was a good idea. To have a word, for extreme condition, using like a yellow bus, on the radio, means it's a life-threatening. You can't give any more explanation,
So you're saying you'd like to have a code for this type of a situation?
It's like a yellow bus. I can't explain anymore. This is the only thing I can say.
The only thing is, you can certainly look at establishing a code word. That's probably a very good idea.
There you go.
You're right. The proper procedure is emergency. Switch over to channel 3. Explain the situation, and even if we have to call 911 to get the police out there, we can do that.
Yep.
But you also have to recognize the situation as well and use some discretion as well. And
use your gut, use your professionalism. You all are professionals in doing this and very experienced. So use your best judgment.
We'll talk more about that too, about when we're in a situation, not to overreact or underreact.
Yeah.
I mean, it could go either way. So
we get into all that too later on in our training. So so intimidation, that was our last role play. But actually the last stage of every crisis situation, what does every crisis situation end in? Tension reduction, and we respond with therapeutic report. Yeah. So whether it goes into a physical altercation or just stays verbal, we know that every crisis situation ends in tension reduction. So we kind of know it will end, right? This what's happening here on my bus is going to come to an end. Kind of good to know, right? Because in the moment you're like, oh my God, but it will end. Okay. So tension reduction again, it's that drop in energy. They gain their rationality back again. They come back to us, right? That's kind of what happens. It occurs after every crisis situation. How we respond is establishing that therapeutic rapport, like Ann talked about at the beginning. So again, we're reestablishing that communication and that trust with our students, because we're gonna be working with them again the next day, right? So that's kind of going back. We will get more into this stage, but basically, yeah, that's when we want to reestablish that trust and that communication, that rapport with our students. Think about that word rapport. So tension reduction, therapeutic rapport, okay? So what might that look like on the bus? How do we do that? We just had a crappy situation with a student where they had this big meltdown, and now it's over, and now they're crying, or they're like, I'm so sorry, are you gonna tell my mom? Or whatever else happens, right? And now what? So what do we do?
Go back to.
Somebody said something?
Yeah, you started, what was it?
Go ahead. Oh, it was probably good. Nothing? Okay, go ahead.
I've had that happen where I would sit down in the seat with the student next to them, say it's okay, you know, we're all gonna be okay, everything's okay.
Yeah, if you're able to do that.
If you're able to, I mean,
Yeah.
to get that, as you say, rapport, to get down at their level and let them know that you're trying to understand or you're understanding. We're just gonna start over again tomorrow. It's gonna be a new day.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're just kind of rebuilding that again so that they know that you still like them, you still care about them, and everything's good, right?
Inappropriate behavior is okay. I understand. I know people like before.
Yeah.
By somebody not like traffic. Behavior isn't okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. But when we say it's okay, whether that's sobbing, whatever,
But
they know it means
hear the behavior.
we're okay. We're okay. It's not that.
What you did is okay is that you and I, our relationship is okay, kind of a thing. But yeah, and you're right that part of this also, part of this process is to process what happened and talk about, okay, A, B, and C happened. And again, this is only if you're able to do this. We realize that sometimes it's just, they have this meltdown and it's like, okay, bye, they're off the bus. So then what we do then is the next time we see them, reconnect and go, good to see you today. I hope you're having a great day, so that you just start over. But if you're able to process it, you'd go into, you know, what happened, what can we do instead? And it's kind of a teaching moment, you know, kind of thing. Yeah. I'll see you tomorrow. So that they know you're okay with them. Like, yeah, okay, good, I can't wait to see you tomorrow. Yeah.
Or when they get on the bus and say, yeah,
Or I'll see you tomorrow.
I just don't see
But that's good too. Yeah.
Too, when we're on a bus, you know, it's like you said, it's not like a classroom, you can't take the other students away or take that student away, but then all the other students are like, what's going on, what happened, what's, you know, why is this, and you just say, everybody, my response, everybody has a bad day, you know, we just be a little patient here, because, and then we can't process through it because there's all these other students on the bus with us, you know, now down over, you know, take them home, you know, you can't, because you don't have that luxury of getting off the bus and talking to them.
You're right.
And then the next day when they get on, there's other students on the bus, you know, really. But what I'd like to see happen, you know, in the situation I just had, a staff member got on the bus and, you know, helped with the situation. And then I asked the staff to call home and give mom the heads up. I don't know if they did or not, but then I'm hoping that they're processing through that the next day.
Right.
You know.
And that's all we can do, right, is that our way of communicating. That's the piece that we can learn, is communicating. Yeah? Yeah, absolutely. So we do what we can do. If we can sit down with them and process the situation, fabulous. If what we can do is say, see you tomorrow, great. But at least we're doing something to reconnect after it's over. And that's really what it's all about, is always maintaining that relationship with our students. Because that will lessen future crisis situations. Because they're going to trust you, that you're still there at the end, right? Okay? All right. Yeah.
One of the things you have to remember, yes, we do have a limited amount of time, but as we get to know our students and as their behaviors change for some reason, and you need to address with some sort of intervention, realize that you might not be able to process this all at one time, but you can do it in small pieces. You can change a spitter who gets aggravated and spits on your para a little bit at a time so that he's no longer doing that. That continued positive support and starting fresh the next day, regardless of behavior, you can change that behavior.
Yeah, you really can. It's
Okay?
And a lot of times, you might not be the one that's processing with them, but if we know about it in the building, we can do that for you. So then when they get on the bus, sometimes I like to get on the bus and say, you know, what do you want to say? Because they talk about you guys. I don't think you guys realize how, like, all day they'll ask about the bus ride. All day.
and when you're gone, it's
All
rough.
day. And we'll get a heads up at 7 in the morning. It's a really big deal, that relationship that they have with you guys. And so if we can even do that inside the building, and then we can come on and say, what do you want to say to them? What do you want to say? You know, or here's a little thing, when you feel like this, what are you going to say? And we can be helpful in that way too. All right.
You guys are aware of the facilities when you brought in our city.
Oh,
yeah.
Yes. And then once we know your name as the sub, then we'll call you by that name because you are no longer a sub. Like they don't know you, because they'll talk about you all the time too. And then you can sub for the sub.
Yeah.
Oh no, I run all your pictures and then with your names underneath them, like we do on a staff board at our building, because our kids go through everything and they know every person. And then whoever picks them up, they're like, oh yeah, I know you.
Yeah, we need to have names instead of sub. Would be good.
We call you guest drivers, really. Guest drivers.
And it would make it a lot better for the kids too. So, this is it for tonight.
Hang on, we have 3 minutes left.
Oh my gosh.
Hang on.
Seriously?
All right, so you can you guys start to see how important it is for you guys to start filling out those conduct reports? Let me know well in advance so I can start working with the staff. And if we need them to come on the buses or add some added support, that's what we'll do. But you need to let us know. Don't wait till it's, you know, a crisis situation if you notice behavior. Also, I want to challenge you guys to think about scenarios on your bus. You've taken in a lot of stuff, and probably you'll go home and think, oh, I wish I brought this up. But what about this situation? Write it down and challenge them.
Yes.
I want to see how good they are. Okay?
Please do next week, and also, can I tell you one more thing before I forget? The next couple weeks, wear comfortable shoes, comfortable clothing always. So, like this, we can't wear next week. Okay?
Well,
Okay?
Well, we have to wear the shoes.
Well, I thought I saw a couple flip-flops.
You should.
They'll just go yeah, don't wear sneakers. Wear or whatever. Okay? Same place, same time.
Yep.
Thank you.
Throw your trash away.
Gaze here. Some of these blank.
Carol told me she was gonna poke my eye.